Hi, Sarah. It's lovely to see you again. We just wanted to catch up with you, and many people will have heard your name recently. I think your most recent blog for my website had over 400,000 views, and you really had been very poorly. Just for context, you've been a head teacher for a long time. You can tell us a little bit about that. And you had a serious set of health emergencies, and we were just wondering how you're doing.
It's lovely to see you too, and thank you for asking and for caring. Do you know, I'm okay. I'm really okay. I've realised it's 6 months since I was hospitalised, and I feel like over the last few weeks, particularly, things have started to get much more positive. The blog was crazy. I didn't know that, it would be, people would be that interested, but it was amazing because it does show that there was a need, to put it out there and for people to respond. And there was so many people that connected with me, being in the same position or just being so sad about it, or people that had worked in schools and had left, 5 years previously, or, are thinking of leaving. So it's, I think I'm well on the road to recovery, which is really feels good.
Wonderful. And Sarah has written another blog for us, which will follow this post, where she tells us all about what she's up to now. And I have to say, you look glorious, Sarah.
Thank you.
And it's such a relief to see you looking so well. And you've been on my shoulder recently. I'm coaching a number of head teachers, and a lot of those head teachers are actually doing absolutely fine. They're quite optimistic, very resilient, passionate in their moral purpose, love their schools, love their colleagues. And then there are other head teachers who feel as if they're kind of on the edge of a little bit of an abyss. They're sort of like, it's all right, but it feels precarious, or, I'm really struggling to make time for the things that matter, or where am I going to be in a year? Where am I going to be in 5 years? I just don't know. And most of the head teachers I work with are a little bit of both, where they love their job one minute and the next minute it's like, oh my God, I feel I'm about to lose everything. And then the next minute it's like, yeah, but I love my job. I love my job. And with all those, and that's what I'm learning, is it's not a dichotomy, it's not an either or. And it's been such a challenging, I want to say 3 years, it's more than that, isn't it? It's three and a half years now. I mean, obviously it was challenging before, but since COVID. What, remind us how many years you were ahead for, and then just if you could give us a little bit of advice on what you would give to head teachers who are in post at the moment.
So I have been ahead for 13 years. And as I said in my very first blog for you, I have always loved it. I've been really passionate about it. I feel that it's something that, I don't know, can you be born to do a vocation? But I felt like I was. And funnily enough, the summer term was always my favourite term. It was my favourite term when I was a child, and it was my favourite term as a head, because you see the progress in the children, you see how they've gelled together. Your youngest children, the phonics start to pay off and they start to read and they start to take off when your older children are ready for secondary school. And then you've got sports days and the end of year show and assemblies for families and summer fair and all of those lovely things that go on in a primary school. So if you are in that bubble now, my biggest advice would be to keep your perspective, because sometimes you find that the smallest of things becomes the things that tip you over the edge. The parents that aren't playing ball on sports day, or who don't understand why they can't take their children home early when everybody else is staying. All those little things seem to add up at this point in the year. And whilst it is the most exciting term and fulfilling term, it's also, I think, the most draining. I think it can really knock you for six if you don't space things out and look at how how it works for you. Because in the summertime as a head, you've got your PTA wanting to do things, you've got your PE coaches wanting to do things, you've got your year 6 teachers and your year 2 teachers desperately needing your support, plus everything else. So you must remember to think about you in all of that. And I was actually the worst person in the world for doing that. So this is what I'm saying to you now, post being poorly, because I was that head that loved my job, and I was that head you know, and I still do. If I wasn't physically ill, I possibly have got to the point where I'd be thinking, do you know what? I could go back. I could go back, but I know that I can't, because I couldn't go back to the job and stay well. So I have to keep myself well, you know, physically and mentally. But I am at that point where I remember the wonderful things about the job, and I wouldn't want people to give up if they don't need to. So if I can help, then that's what we'll do.
Wonderful. And for those who do want to be in the profession for the long game, but who know that, like you've just confessed, and I will confess, we're not always the best people at looking after ourselves. We know the theory, Sarah. But if you were to speak to coaching or working with a head teacher, and they're saying to you, look, I know I'm not looking after myself, but never mind, let's talk about my strategic development plan for the year ahead. Let's talk about my vision for the school. And they're kind of brushing those things off and say, well, that doesn't matter anyway. Where would you be nudging them as a coach in terms of, I suppose, sustainability is the word I'm looking for?
To honestly build that time into your diary for yourself. Now that could mean you working at home. I'm not saying don't work, but it could be you're taking a few hours out of the building and you're going to work on something at home where it's quiet. Or I don't know, I've started working in a local cafe because they do amazing cakes. You've got free Wi-Fi and they do great cakes, and I'll plug myself in and I'll work there. You know, not so easy to do in your head, because sometimes parents see you and you're thinking, oh God, they can see me. But you know, build that time in, and also be realistic about your to-do lists. I opened my diary the other day, my school diary, and laughed to my partner and said, well, no wonder I got poorly. Just look at this. And I opened the diary, and it was, a big diary, full page for each day. And there was no space in anywhere. Each day was starting at, I was in school at 7:30. My first meeting would be 7:45, and then this and that. And there was never any time built in for me to reflect, for me to plan for those meetings that are really important because they're going to be tricky. So then you end up taking all of that home because you haven't got to record those meetings somewhere, or you've got that lesson observation that you did. Or so be realistic. If you're making a to-do list, write down realistically how long that is going to take you, because what you'll realize straight away is you can't actually do it all. You haven't got all that time in that day. So move something. So that, if someone had told me that 5 years ago, I think that would have made a big difference. Or possibly I would have done it for 6 weeks and then gone back to my old ways. Who knows? But it is important
to build in that time to think, to process, to be.
Yeah, we can't be on this treadmill all the time of anxiety and moving on to the next thing and the next thing. We're not really built for that, because whenever you feel anxious about a meeting or even just concerned that it might be difficult, or going to observe a teacher and you've got to give them feedback that's probably not what they wanted to hear, you're in that state of fight and flight almost all the time. So your physical body is in that kind of fear factor all of the time. That's there to protect you. That adrenaline is there to protect you in times of trouble, not every day, all day, but we just get into that mode, don't we?
Yeah. And even as you're talking, you always started talking very relaxed. I can hear in your voice, it's up here. You're reliving that hamster wheel. So we could keep talking all evening, Sarah. But we just, as some of you know, Sarah and I are both coaches. In fact, I'm really proud of this. So I've been a coach for 3.5 years now. Sarah is at the very nearly at the end of her training to be a coach herself, and we are offering, we are currently coaching a number of school leaders, and we'd like to offer that coaching to some more of you. Just some of you may be thinking, oh God, coaching, that's not for me, I haven't got time for that. I just wanted, in full transparency, I have coached Sarah, and just wanted to ask Sarah to tell us a little bit about, as she sees it, what coaching is and why it was something worth doing.
So for me, I really knew very little about coaching, but I saw you speak at a conference and about well-being and about stress. And I loved what you had to say, and it really, really resounded with me. So I thought, sort of fangirled you on Twitter, didn't I? And said, oh, I saw you today. And this was me in the front row. And because I was doing a conference for the Isle of Wight and wanted you to speak. And within getting to know each other, you offered some coaching broadly, you offered coaching out summer holidays before you go back to school, you know, some time and space to talk to someone. And I thought, you know what, I don't really know what coaching is, but let's give it a go. And those intense sessions that we had in the build up to the autumn term were amazing. I just felt like I walked into the building and on that first development day and was full of hope, and I can do this, and these are important, these are the important things, and these aren't. So it was great. And then we had more sessions, and I have to say that some of those sessions were just in the build up to Ofsted. Some of those sessions were me literally just bending your ear. There was no what's your big goal, what are we aiming for. I talked and you listened and you nodded, and then you asked really pertinent questions, and then I thought, oh yeah, actually I see where you're going with that. Not really important, is it? And I can honestly say that being ill, and it's been 6 months since I was hospitalised, and we had a plan, you know, but our coaching sessions were about what I could do next in the next 3 years, 5 years. You know, I'm 52. I knew I wouldn't be able to sustain it to 60. Didn't want to, actually, felt like there was something else to do. And so we made those plans together, or you supported me to make my plans. And so when I was ill, and then when I started to feel better, I could draw on those plans already. I didn't have to do any more work. The groundwork was done. And I knew that there was a future. You know, in my darkest moments, it was like, I don't know who I am anymore. I'm not a head teacher. But, you know, that doesn't last. Then you start to think about, okay, there are options. There are things to do. And I think for me, coaching gave me a safe space. It gave me someone that was completely non-judgmental. It wasn't another head teacher in my cluster or my area who knew the context of everything. And it was someone who believed in me. And when I said, oh, but, you know, I can't, or, you know, I can't do that. You know, you put that the other way, don't you? Well, why can't you? Why can't you? And actually, it opened up a whole different belief set in myself. And I can't, it's life-changing. It is life-changing because it just changes your feelings about yourself, and that's really important.
Thank you, Sarah. And the thing to point out is that, I mean, in the 3.5 years when I've coached over 100 people now, and you can coach people in any direction and every direction. So I've coached people from deputy headship into landscape gardening. I've coached people from headship into executive headship of 3 or 4 schools. You know, I've coached people from not being a teacher at all to going and starting a PGCE. So it's all about, for me, it's all about, often when people come into a coaching session, they'll think, and I did when I started coaching, there's only one way forward. There's one way forward. There's one definition of success, and then gradually opening up those paths and saying, but actually, what's around this tree here? Oh, well, actually, oh, that looks interesting. Or what's down this, you know, behind this moldy old bench here? Oh, well, that one doesn't look as if it's quite for me. But you've unpacked the possibilities, because it's all about possibility and optimism, I think. And I am still myself. So,
and I would hate for people to think that, you know, up with my blog and all the rest of it, that, you know, I'm still in that place, because I'm not. And I think it's, you know, I'm able to show people that you can get up, you can be resilient, you can wallow, and it's perfectly fine to wallow for a while, because that's what we do as humans, but then we need to move on. And, you know, so I suppose coaching really helped me do that.
and rather than the word wallow, I'll just ask you to reframe that. As my coach would say, all feelings matter.
Yes, they do. I suppose I was reading something about in a magazine, a psychologist magazine, about you allow yourself to be a hippo and wallow in the mud for a certain amount of time, then pick yourself up and go and do something else, because no one wants to be in that mud forever, do they? So I think that's where that's come from.
Fantastic. Well, these 2 hippos need to go and get some dinner now and walk some dogs.
They do. And can I just apologise if you can hear strange noises? My dog is crying because she wants to go out, but I know that if I let her out, she's going to bark and bark and bark, so I'm making her stay in. So if there is some grumbling in the background, it's just a Labrador who wants to go and play. I will let her out as soon as we stop.
Not last night's curry. No. Thank you, Sarah. You take care.
Lovely to see you.